I want to talk real estate. It's probably one of the biggest stories of the month because things we knew would get strong, but how strong is now, well, it's anyone's guess because you've got, as Peter Switzer said to us a little earlier, you've got the RBA saying that they won't see any real rises or indicate any real rises in interest rates until 2024. So people don't have that same hesitancy about jumping onto a commitment, say a new mortgage or upscaling to a new house or unit, and then thinking to themselves, oh, I might get burnt early on. No, there's no burning. If interest rates stay as low as they are now, there'll be no burning until 2024. Anyway, each Saturday we look at things through the eyes of many of the experts in the industry.
This is our house. And now on the Chris Smith Show, Open House.
Yes, Open House. I'll invite the country's leading real estate experts to share their thoughts on the market. Now, the front page of the Telegraph today said, the biggest housing boom in 20 years has pushed prices to record levels in more than 30 New South Wales suburbs in the past 4 months alone. They're saying veteran agents say they have never seen such consistently high prices. Well, we've got our own expert real estate consultant. His name is Peter O'Malley, and we like to have him in as often as we can from Harris Partners in Balmain. And he's in the studio with me right now. Peter, thank you very much for coming in.
My pleasure, Chris. Good afternoon.
Before we talk in general, I want to just get a little piece of the puzzle from Balmain, for instance, which is quite often a pretty good litmus test of what the market might be doing. What have you seen that has floored you in recent times?
The market started with a 10% pop in prices for 2021, and the results that are coming through on a weekly basis are superseding that. So it's still finding fresh highs.
Right. Beyond 10%?
Correct.
Wow.
Yes. So I've just heard of a result today where it kicked off with what was a reasonably fair price guide of 1.8. They scaled that up to 2 million during the campaign, and it just sold for 2.7.
Wow. That's almost $1 million more than what they thought or what they were price guiding in the beginning.
Correct, yeah. It's clearly a market that's off the chain and nobody knows where the ceiling is here. You'll only know the ceiling when it hits it.
The boom in Sydney's property market showing no signs of slowing down. Homes have sold at record prices in more than 30 Sydney suburbs in the 4 months, with values rising $1,100 per day in some areas. Have you seen this before? When was the last time you've seen such a spike?
There was a nice pop coming out of the federal election in 2019. But what was different about that is that was on the back of the credit squeeze that had played out from 2018, and the federal government started unfreezing the credit squeeze after the federal election, and that was probably a 5, maybe 10% pop in the market. But I have to say, I don't think I've ever seen the market run more than 10% in my service area, for example, in a 2-month window, which has now happened.
Given what we're hearing from the Reserve Bank governor, what's your feeling about how high this may go?
As I just mentioned, I don't think you'll know where the ceiling to this market is until we hit it. The RBA seem very comfortable, bizarrely, with what's going on. We've got a situation in Australia where the ANZ CEO, Shane Elliott, is more concerned with what's going on in the housing market than what the central bank is. And I've never seen a retail bank more cautious than a central banker.
So the retail banker is more conservative than what we expect from the governor of the Reserve Bank?
Correct. And ANZ have speculated that they may introduce their own sort of credit conditions to tighten this up because if you look at Shane Elliott's comments during the week, he seems concerned with what's going on, whereas the RBA seem completely relaxed.
But aren't the credit requirements and the checks that are being done now on potential purchasers, potential mortgage holders, quite strenuous, more strenuous than what we've seen for a long time?
They've been watered down post-federal election, and then as the COVID hit, they were watered down further. So, unfortunately, you could say that the Banking Royal Commission may well have not happened because credit is flowing freely. And people are speculating what is driving this, and the answer is debt.
Right, okay. What's your advice to buyers looking to get into the market? An increasing number of properties are listed POA, price on application. Now, it's happening in areas and suburbs of Sydney that don't normally operate that way.
That's right. And that's probably the real estate agents not wanting to get caught in an underquoting circumstance.
Yeah.
So when you give a price guide and the market's jumping 10, 20% above that, you're open to accusations of underquoting when it's actually just the market's
Which
on
many
fire.
agents have got in trouble for.
That's correct, and understandably they want to avoid that. So a lot of agents are running price on application, contact agent for a price guide, and they're saying the auction's on in 4 weeks, and where the auction finishes is the price of the property. We won't be giving updated or specific price guides because we don't want to run foul of the fairly tough underquoting laws that the New South Wales government introduced about 3 years ago.
If you've got a question for Peter O'Malley, he can certainly take one or two. 131873 is the telephone number, 131873. Let me ask about stock at the moment.
Yes.
We've still got low levels of stock, and therefore we've got lots of buyers out there. What are you seeing in terms of buyers that are actually putting their hand up and bidding? Are you seeing, scores of buyers, or are you still seeing the 2 and 3 numbers?
We're running inspections where 40, 50 parties, not people, but parties will turn up to one inspection, and there's probably conceivably 10% of those that would bid on the subject property. As an agent, how you deal with that is you scale the price expectations up as quick as you can to have the aspirationals of the people that have no chance of purchasing the property drop out.
Yeah. So then you get the real purchasers, and then they do their bit between each other. So what do people do when they see the front page headlines? Are they trying to get in quickly to try and take advantage of this climb, or have they been scared off by the heat in the market?
Interestingly, we haven't seen any buyers scared off by this. They all seem to be rising to the challenge.
Right.
But I think if prices do keep running at this rate, overall Sydney rose at 3% in February. That's annualised 36%. It won't be too long before buyers say, you know what, leave us out of it. We'll wait for the other side of this to occur. And there will be a second half to this stanza that's taking place at the moment. But as a buyer, I think hesitation is your enemy. You're either going in to buy or forget about buying and wait for the
Explain that to me.
side to this.
Are you saying that if you're going to sell your house, make sure you're purchasing as well, because otherwise you'll miss the climb?
Correct. If you sell your home because you can get a good price and say we'll be relaxed about purchasing, the market could keep running away from you.
Yeah. See, there may be the feeling that, you've just corrected what my thoughts were. Yes, I want to sell my house because I know I'm going to get top dollar out of it, but I might just sit out of the market for a while until it cools off. There's no sign of cooling off.
Correct. That would be an ill-advised strategy at the moment, Chris.
Right.
There are times when that looks like a good strategy, particularly in a obviously falling market, but we've got the reverse.
So how do we determine the price of our property when we speak to the agent to say, we want to go to market now, where we want to move on? How do we know what a fair price is?
Interestingly, Chris, comparable sales are not the best guide in this market because the market keeps hitting fresh highs. So the right price for your property is the highest price that your agent can convince someone to pay. And as an agent at the moment, I'm giving people a loose guide as to what their property is worth as a base case, but I'm not telling any of my clients where the upper limit is because the market is finding those fresh highs on a weekly basis at the moment. As a vendor, you must never allow a real estate agent to talk to you in terms of reserve price, Chris.
Right.
Defining reserve price is the seller's bottom line. And when you're in a property boom, the seller's bottom line should not be the agent's focus. What you need to focus on is what are all of the buyers' top price for my property in this market at this time.
Okay. Are apartments flying in the same alleyway, or have they been pulled back?
Paralleling, Sydney did 3% in February for houses. Apartments did 1.2%. It's a flight to quality in apartments. So generic high-rise is struggling in suburbia. Apartments around the harbour, special features is doing quite well, but they are underperforming houses.
Okay. What about advertising? If the market is this hot at the moment, should we be pulling our head in on advertising?
I don't think you need to overspend. You need to run a competent campaign, of course, but the days of spending $10,000 or $20,000 to find sufficient number of buyers for your home are over.
I saw the other day. Sorry, go on. Continue.
Yeah, so a real estate agent may ask you for an advertising contribution. I think in this market you can ask that agent to wear that risk on your behalf and you'll pay when they deliver an acceptable result. But we don't need to find ourselves spending $10,000 and $20,000 on an advertising campaign because the same amount of buyers are coming whether you spend 5 or 10,000, Chris. That's the big point. And the difference between spending 5 and 10 is you're really advertising the agent's brand in the marketplace more than your house past a certain point.
Okay, so be careful of all of that. What about early offers? It's not the climate to take an early offer before you go to the market.
What we're seeing is massive numbers at the first 2 or 3 inspections, and then it quickly waters down. So you touched on stock levels earlier. So when a listing first comes to market, what we're seeing is massive crowds at those first 2 or 3 inspections. And if the home doesn't transact shortly thereafter, as an agent, you find that the inspections become tougher to get people to them. So interestingly, and we're noticing this with the amount of properties that are selling prior to auction, the big prices are often being achieved in the first 10 to 14 days of the campaign as a desperate and frustrated buyer pays overs to secure the property.
And doesn't want to see it run away from him or her.
Wants to blitz the competition out of it. Yeah.
That's a good buying tactic?
It is a good buying tactic if you think the market's going to keep running.
Yeah. Okay.
How will these prices look in 2-3 years' time? That's the question that property buyers need to ask themselves at the moment.
So if it's a kind of seller's market in terms of advertising, it might be a seller's market in terms of commission rates for real estate agents.
Well, unfortunately, that's as a real estate agent, that may well be the case, Chris.
Yes.
But I think homeowners should look at the value that they're getting from their real estate agent, not what they're paying them. And a real estate agent can determine the price fairly significantly. I'll give you one story I heard last weekend at dinner. A couple went in to their real estate agent to sign a contract to sell their home pre-auction. They were happy with the bid that was on the table. As they walked into the real estate agent's office, the real estate agent said, "I'm about to change your life. Don't walk into that room, come out the back." A buyer had walked into the office, another buyer had walked into the office and said, "I want to buy that home," and put a contract on the table $400,000 more than what the owners walked in to sign off at. So the agent well and truly covered their fee, whatever it was in that instance.
No, I bet he or she did. You better believe it. Yeah, so it's just amazing. And as you say, from what we're hearing from the RBA, they're going to wait until employment gets down to probably 5%, and then they're going to hope that wages increase and then the job's done, as opposed to just seeing how high the housing market will go. Interesting times.
Very interesting. The RBA seem flat out to create inflation for mine.
Yeah, interesting. Peter, fantastic. Great insight. Thank you very much for coming in.
My pleasure. Thank you, Chris.
Great stuff. Consultant with Harris Partners in Balmain, Peter O'Malley.